Hi, Stephen. So what do the initial results show us?
Well, honestly, Ros, it's been a somewhat chaotic 12 hours here. The initial results that first started flowing through last night seemed to indicate that the opposition parties here were in a pretty strong position. But then there was a sudden shift. There was a basically fairly serious technical issue that seemed to be playing with some of the results that were being shown on the official counting app. That saw the election supervisor, Mohammed Saneem, call a late-night press conference at around midnight last night, where he basically said that there was some sort of technical issue that was going on. People seemed to be entering the wrong data into the app, and as a result, they effectively took it online for several hours while they tried to fix the problem. Now, when we woke up this morning, the numbers painted a very different picture. They seemed to show, rather than the opposition being in pole position, that Fiji First, the ruling party, the incumbent power, in pole position, with Frank Bainimarama around 45% of the vote sitting there with him. So whilst that's certainly not final, and whilst we are only now waiting for the final result, the final count to get underway, that does seem to indicate that Fiji First is probably, at least in this stage, in a somewhat stronger position to form the next government. But look, the fact that the app went down with this technical glitch, the fact that it seemed to show results that were false, has already fueled a whole lot of distrust and, in some cases, some conspiracy theorising online, and is going to do nothing to build up public trust in the election process here in Fiji.
So what have been the main issues in this election, Stephen?
Look, there have been a host of issues. Look, probably the main one is the economy, unsurprisingly, given that many Fijians have had a torrid time of it, economically speaking. The COVID-19 pandemic really smashed the tourism sector here, with a large number of people essentially seeing their income disappear overnight when flights to Fiji stopped. And since then, the economic turmoil that's been caused by Russia's invasion of Ukraine and the subsequent supply shocks that we've seen out of that have seen people really suffer again. Inflation has soared. A lot of people are struggling to keep pace with the cost of living. So in some ways, this vote was a bit of a referendum on just how well Fiji First has managed to shepherd the economy through that turmoil. But of course, there are other issues that have been bubbling along, in particular the question of exactly what a new government led by Sitiveni Rabuka, who is Mr Bainimarama's main opponent, would mean for Indian Fijians. Now, there's a bit of delicate and sensitive history here. Mr Rabuka, like Mr Bainimarama, led a military coup. His was back in 1987, and at that time, a government that was in some ways led by Indo-Fijians was kicked out of power. In the wake of that, a large number of Indian Fijians fled the country. Now, one of the main attack lines from Fiji First is that Mr Rabuka, if he was going to become Prime Minister, would introduce discriminatory policies that would favour native Fijians at the expense of Indian Fijians. Mr Rabuka has denied that. He says he's a changed man. He's apologised for his military coup, but nonetheless, that persistent undercurrent of ethnic tension is still noticeable here in Fiji.
What are the implications of the results then for us here in Australia?
Look, I don't think there are huge implications for Australia either way. Mr Bainimarama, over recent years, has drawn quite close to Australia. That's in sharp contrast after his military coup in 2006, when Australia led a regional push to essentially expel Fiji from the Pacific Islands Forum and to diplomatically isolate them. What happened after that is that Fiji drew much closer to China. And from about 2013 onwards, perhaps earlier than that, what we've seen is an attempt from Australia to try and draw back towards Fiji, particularly after the last two elections, which have been judged both free and fair. So Australia is pretty confident about its position with Fiji under Mr Bainimarama, but they're also pretty confident about Mr Rabuka. They've got a decent relationship with him, and Mr Rabuka has also publicly said that he believes that Fiji First and Frank Bainimarama have drawn too close to China. So whilst Australia is watching this very closely, I don't think they've got a clear preference for a winner. The main thing they want to see is a credible election with a fair result that reflects the will of the people, and that's what multinational observers are watching very, very closely as this count continues.
Thanks, Stephen.